Today, we're going to be going deep into the Elektron Digitone 2. So we'll be kind of exploring how it blends those classic synthesis techniques with some more modern features. And
Yeah, and the workflow is supposed to be really, really intuitive. And
yeah, and it seems super powerful and complex.
it is, but in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. And so you've given me all this information about it, all these specs, all these descriptions, and this thing just seems like a real powerhouse of the synthesizer.
It is.
What sparked your interest in this? Are you thinking about getting one?
I am. I think what really gets me is just how much control and flexibility it gives you.
Hmm.
Like it takes familiar concepts, but it's not just about recreating those old sounds, you
Right.
know? It's about going beyond that and really discovering new sonic territories.
I like that.
Yeah, and we're going to get into all the details today, but yeah, just be prepared to be surprised by what this thing can do.
Okay, well, let's jump right in.
Okay.
The Vorse material mentions synth machines quite a bit. Can you break down what those are and what makes each one special?
Yeah, so you've got four distinct synth machines, the wave tone, the swarmer,
Ooh, the Swarmer.
the FM tone, and the FM drum.
Okay.
And it's really like having four different synth engines all under the hood, each
Yeah.
with their own personality and sound.
Okay, let's start with that wave tone.
Okay.
What kind of sonic adventures can we expect there?
So that one is like your gateway to classic subtractive synthesis,
Okay.
but with a modern twist, you know?
Okay.
So it's all about shaping those waveforms, adding some grit with the phase distortion,
Hmm.
blending in some noise for extra texture.
Okay.
You know, think like warm analog style pads, cutting leads, all that good stuff.
Really a wide variety.
Yeah, a lot of range there.
Okay. And then we have Swarmer.
Yeah.
The name alone just kind of like,
It sounds powerful, doesn't
yeah,
it?
it sounds intense.
Yeah, so that one's all about creating massive, evolving soundscapes,
Ah.
built on that idea of a supersaw,
Mhm.
which is basically layering multiple detuned sawtooth waves together.
Okay.
So imagine like a wall of sound constantly shifting and evolving.
Yeah.
Perfect for epic cinematic moments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So, okay, so we go from classic to cinematic.
exactly.
All right, now the source material mentions FM tone being the original Digitone FM engine.
Right.
So does that mean it's just a rehash, or is there something new here?
I mean, it's definitely an evolution, not a revolution.
Uh-huh.
It keeps that signature Digitone character.
Okay.
Think bell-like tones, metallic textures, and, those otherworldly soundscapes that FM synthesis is known for. But,
Mhm.
it's got refined controls, added features.
Okay.
It's more versatile than ever.
Awesome. And then lastly, we have FM drum. And this is where things get a little experimental, right?
Yes, this is where it gets really fun.
Yeah.
So it's not your typical drum machine. And it sounds,
Okay.
FM drum takes the principles of FM synthesis and applies them to percussion. So you can craft those classic drum sounds if you want, but it really shines when you're creating unusual textures, metallic hits,
Interesting.
even melodic percussive elements to add a unique flavor to your rhythms.
Like that.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, now the source material also mentions modularity
Yes,
at its core,
right.
but this is a self-contained unit, right?
It is. Yeah.
So what do they mean by that?
It's all about the freedom to experiment.
Okay.
You can swap out those synth machines, route the audio play with different filter types.
Okay.
It's almost like having a modular system, but packed into a single box.
And speaking of filters, there are 6 different types.
6?
That's quite a few.
A lot to play with.
Yeah. Do they all sound drastically different, or are there subtle nuances between them?
They each add a unique color to the sound, for sure.
Okay.
You've got your classic low-pass filters for smooth roll-offs,
Right.
but then you've got comb filters for those resonant phasing effects.
Okay.
There's an equalizer for surgical sound shaping,
Wow.
even a bass width filter. Okay.
Giving you precise control over that low end.
So it's really about finding the flavor that you want.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got these fantastic synth engines
Yeah.
and all these ways to shape the sound.
Right.
But how do we actually turn this into music? What
Yeah.
about the sequencing and performance features?
Right. Well, that's where the Elektron sequencer comes in.
Okay.
This is the heart of the Digitone the SICK,
Okay.
and it's famous for its flexibility and its depth.
Okay.
You've got 128 steps to work with, which is a lot of space to create intricate patterns and evolving soundscapes.
Yeah, that is a lot of steps.
It is.
And each step can have its own set of parameter locks, right?
Yes, that's key to the Elektron workflow.
And can you remind me again what those are?
Yeah, so parameter locks are a game changer.
Okay.
It's not just about programming nodes. You can automate changes to almost any parameter over time,
Okay.
right within the sequencer itself.
So like filter sweeps?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Filter sweeps, LFO modulation.
Even subtle shifts in timbre all happening in perfect sync with your sequence.
So it's not just about triggering notes, it's about shaping the sound at each step.
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty amazing. And then there's this Euclidean sequencer,
Yes.
which sounds like it's something straight out of a math textbook.
It is rooted in mathematical principles,
Okay.
but the results are anything but dry.
Okay.
Euclidean rhythms are all about creating complex polyrhythms,
Okay.
intricate patterns based on these mathematical algorithms.
Okay.
So it's a fantastic way to explore unconventional rhythmic textures and add a unique flavor to your music.
So instead of like painstakingly putting in all the triggers, you can just use math.
Yeah, let the math do the work.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, so we've talked about the sequencer.
Right.
But you can actually play this thing right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not just for programming.
It's designed for both studio and stage.
Okay.
It's incredibly hands-on and responsive. You've got aftertouch pitch, bend, a mod wheel. For expressive playing, you can shape sounds in real time.
Okay.
Add that human touch to your performance.
So you can really jam on this thing.
Yeah.
Like improvise and really use it as an instrument.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just a pre-programmed box.
It's about finding that balance between the pre-programmed structure and that real-time improvisation.
Awesome.
And the Digitone gives you the tools to do both.
Excellent.
So it really is versatile.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but I'm already feeling overwhelmed by all the possibilities.
Oh, yeah, I know there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there is. But we have time. So let's dive deeper into each of those synth machines.
All right, let's do it.
Starting with the Wavetone engine.
Okay.
What makes it so special?
Well, one of the coolest things is its waveform morphing capability.
Correct.
You're not stuck with basic waveforms like sine, sawtooth, or square.
Right.
You can seamlessly blend between different shapes,
Okay.
create hybrid waveforms with unique characteristics.
So you can create your own waveforms? That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Imagine creating a smooth transition from a warm sine wave to a buzzy sawtooth,
Wow.
all controlled by an LFO or an envelope.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it is.
What else makes it special?
It's all about the details. You've got phase distortion for adding grit and edge to your sound,
Oh.
noise generators for injecting texture and atmosphere,
Okay.
and of course all those classic subtractive synthesis controls, filter cutoff resonance envelopes, for ultimate sound shaping power.
So you could spend days just with this one engine,
Oh yeah, for sure.
just playing with all the possibilities.
Absolutely.
All right, what about Swarmer? What makes that one stand out?
So Swarmer, remember, is all about those massive evolving soundscapes
Yeah.
based on the super saw concept,
Okay.
layering those multiple detuned sawtooth waves together.
It's like a choir of sawtooths,
That's a good way to put it.
all slightly out of tune.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right.
And the Digitone the second gives you so much control over the sonic swarm. You can adjust the number of oscillators, the detuning the stereo spread, and even add modulation to
Right.
create truly dynamic and evolving textures.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
All right, so we've talked about Wavetone, we've talked about Swarmer.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about FM tone. The world of FM synthesis.
All right.
What makes that so special?
So FM synthesis is all about using one oscillator to modulate the frequency of another.
Okay.
And this creates complex interactions and a wide range of timbres that you wouldn't get with subtractive synthesis.
So it's not your typical start with a basic waveform and then filter it?
No, it's a different approach completely.
Right.
You're creating sound by modulating the frequency of one oscillator with another.
Okay.
It opens up a whole new world.
And the FM tone engine on the Digitone II gives you a lot of control over that.
You have control over everything, the
Yeah.
algorithms, the ratios between the frequencies, the envelopes, the modulation. It's all there.
So you could create like bells and metallic sounds.
Yeah, definitely bells, metallic textures, evolving pads, growling basses, shimmering leads. You name it.
Wow.
It's really versatile.
It sounds like FM synthesis is a lot about experimentation,
Oh, yeah.
pushing boundaries.
Absolutely.
What are some of the more unusual sounds you can get out of this?
I mean, that's the beauty of FM synthesis. You never know what you're going to discover.
Right.
You can create sounds that are totally unique, from subtle textures and evolving pads to aggressive basses and otherworldly soundscapes.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, can we spend a little more time with that last synth machine,
Yes.
the FM drum?
FM drum is definitely a wild card.
What makes it so special?
Well, it takes the principles of FM synthesis and applies them to percussive sounds.
Okay.
So you're not triggering pre-recorded drum hits, you're synthesizing the drum sounds themselves.
Wow.
And because you're using FM synthesis, you have a lot of control over the character of the drums. You can create everything from classic kicks, snares, and hi-hats to metallic clangs, otherworldly booms and textures that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
So this is really a sound design studio in a box.
It really is, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, that's exciting.
We haven't even talked about the sequencer in detail yet, or the performance features, or the connectivity options.
I know I'm already excited for part 2 of our deep dive, but for now, let's leave our listeners with a taste of what we've explored and come back ready to delve even deeper into the Elektron Digitone 2.
I can't wait.
Me too.
Welcome back. Are you ready to get into the heart of what makes the Digitone 2 so special?
I am. I think we kind of touched on it, but I really want to dive into the Elektron sequencer.
Yeah.
What makes that so special? What makes it different?
Well, it's famous for its flexibility.
Okay.
You know, that signature Elektron workflow, it's pattern-based.
Okay.
So you're working with a grid, 128 steps. But the really cool thing is each step can trigger a note. But it can also manipulate parameters, so you can create dynamic shifts, changes right within your sequences.
So it's not just about where the notes are. It's about what the sound is doing at each point.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the magic of parameter locks.
Okay, and remind me what those are again.
Yeah, so imagine you've got like a simple bass line going.
Okay.
With parameter locks, you can automate filter sweeps, LFO modulation, even the decay time of each note,
Wow.
all within the sequencer.
So it's like mini automation lanes for every parameter.
It is.
Right on the sequencer.
Exactly.
That's wild. I can see why people would rave about that.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Now, what about that Euclidean sequencer? We talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah.
How does that fit into all of this?
So that is a fantastic tool for unconventional rhythms. It uses mathematical algorithms to distribute triggers across those 128 steps,
Okay.
often in really surprising and complex ways.
So instead of me going in and putting every trigger where I want it,
You let the math do the work?
math does the work.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so it's perfect for polyrhythms and creating rhythmic patterns that would be a headache to program manually.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's all about embracing the unexpected.
Okay.
You can tweak those algorithm parameters,
Right.
control the density and complexity.
Okay.
You can create everything from driving techno grooves to like intricate syncopated patterns.
It's like generative music almost.
It is, yeah, a little bit.
But you have control.
You do, you have a lot of control.
Excellent. Okay, so we've talked about the sequencer.
Yeah.
We know this thing's got those awesome synth engines
Right.
and all these modulation capabilities.
Right.
But how do those two things talk to each other? How does that all work?
That's where the real magic happens. Remember those parameter locks we talked about?
Yes.
They're the key to
Yeah, I know.
unlocking the full potential of the Digitone 2. So imagine you're using the wavetone engine.
Okay.
You want to create like a pad sound that slowly evolves over time.
Oh.
You can use those parameter locks to subtly shift the waveform shape, modulate the filter cutoff, introduce delicate LFO modulation, all perfectly synced to the sequencer.
Oh, wow. So you're not just sequencing notes, you're sequencing the entire sound.
Exactly. Every parameter, every nuance of those synth engines can be controlled by the sequencer.
That's incredible. So it's like sculpting sound in real time as the sequence is playing.
It is. You become a sonic architect.
I like that.
Yeah, shaping and molding the soundscape with each passing step.
All right, so we've established this is a sequencer powerhouse.
Yes,
But we also know that it has all these performance-oriented features.
it does.
How does it translate to the stage? How do you actually play this thing?
It's designed with performance in mind. Remember aftertouch, pitch bend, that mod wheel?
Yes.
Those aren't just there for expressive recordings. You can use them to manipulate sounds in real time during a performance. Add subtle variations, dramatic shifts to your sequences.
So you can jam on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Use it as an expressive instrument.
Yes, it's all about bringing that human element into the electronic music.
So it's about finding that balance between the structure
Yeah.
and the improv.
Exactly.
Cool. What about the arpeggiator?
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about that too much. How does that work?
The arpeggiator is great for creating melodic patterns and adding movement to your music.
Okay.
So you hold down a chord, a series of notes, and the arpeggiator will automatically play them in a rhythmic pattern. You can adjust the pattern, the speed, the octave range, even the direction.
So like if I just hold down a simple chord,
Mm-hmm.
turn on the arpeggiator, I've got a sequence.
You've got an instant melody.
Right.
And then with those performance controls, like the mod wheel aftertouch, you can manipulate those patterns in real time, make them even more dynamic.
It's like having an extra pair of hands
Exactly.
to help you play.
It frees you up to focus on other elements of the performance.
Arpeggios parameter locks Euclidean rhythms.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
But are there any other performance features that go beyond just like individual notes and parameters?
Yes. One of the coolest features is the sound per step change.
What is that?
It lets you assign different sounds to each step of a sequence.
Okay.
So imagine a sequence that starts with a mellow pad,
Okay.
then morphs into a driving bass line,
Okay.
then transitions to a percussive groove, all within the same 128-step pattern.
So you're not just sequencing notes, you're sequencing sounds.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And you can control those transitions on the fly, use the sequencer's controls to jump between different sections, trigger variations, mute or unmute tracks. It's like having a whole band at your fingertips.
Yeah, it really is like having a whole band in this box.
Right at your command, ready to respond to your creative whim.
It's not just a synth, it's like a performance instrument for electronic music.
I think that's a great way to put it. The Digitone 2 blurs those lines between studio and stage, between sound design and performance.
Yeah, it's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid beast that empowers you to create and perform electronic music in ways that we just haven't seen before.
We've covered so much ground, but I'm already feeling overwhelmed by how deep and versatile this instrument is.
I know, and there's still so much more.
I know.
But don't worry, we'll unpack it all in part 3 of our deep dive. We'll unravel the mysteries of MIDI control, external audio routing.
Yes.
We'll delve into the world of LFOs envelopes, that powerful modulation matrix.
Get ready to go even deeper. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've made it to part 3.
I know, can you believe it?
I know we've gone through the synth engines, the sequencer, the performance features, but I feel like there's still more to uncover.
There is.
It's like the synth is a sonic onion.
I like that.
Every layer we peel back, there's something else.
Yeah, and we're about to peel back the final layers today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's talk about connectivity.
Okay.
The specs mention all these different inputs and outputs. So how does this thing actually play with other gear?
Yeah, it's built to connect and collaborate.
Got
You've
it.
got balanced stereo inputs and outputs, so
Okay.
you can hook it up to your audio interface, your mixer, other studio gear.
So you can bring in audio from other places, process it through the Digitone, and send it back out.
Exactly.
Wow, so it really becomes like its own little studio.
A sonic laboratory.
Yeah.
Imagine running a drum loop through it, using the filters to shape the sound,
Okay.
adding some FM grit from the FM tone engine,
Okay.
and then sending it back out to your mixer.
That sounds really cool.
Endless possibilities.
All right, what about MIDI?
MIDI.
We know it's got MIDI in and out,
Yeah.
but how deep does that go? Can it control a whole bunch of other instruments?
Oh, yeah. The MIDI implementation on this thing is really powerful.
Okay.
You can use it to control external synths, drum machines effects units, even software instruments on your computer.
Wow.
So think of it as the brain of your electronic music setup, sending out the MIDI data to sync everything, creating these intricate polyrhythmic patterns.
So it can be like the conductor
It can.
of an orchestra of instruments.
It really can, and with its 16 individual MIDI tracks, you've got precise control over each instrument, shaping the performance with nuanced timing and expressive variations.
It's like a symphony of electronic sounds.
It is a symphony.
All right, now I've heard about Overbridge.
Ah, yes, Overbridge.
It's this Elektron software suite.
It's correct.
How does that play with all this?
So Overbridge is a game changer for studio workflows.
Okay.
It lets you connect the Digitone 2 per second directly to your computer,
Okay.
control it right from your Dudio.
So it's like a plug-in version of the Digitone,
Kind of, yeah.
but it's the actual hardware.
Exactly. You can record individual tracks as audio, automate parameters, stream audio back and forth with minimal latency.
No more messing with all those cables and stuff.
It streamlines everything.
All right, so we've talked about the connections,
Right.
but there's one more thing.
One last piece of the puzzle.
Modulation.
Yes.
The source material mentions LFOs envelopes a modulation matrix.
It can get a little abstract, but it's where the fun is.
Okay, so let's break this down.
Right.
LFOs and envelopes.
Yes. The building blocks of modulation.
Can you remind us what they are and how they're used?
An LFO, low-frequency oscillator. It's
Okay.
like a hidden pulse,
Okay.
generating signals that are too slow to hear as tones,
Okay.
but you can route those signals to control other parameters, creating changes over time.
So it's like a secret agent shaping the sound.
Exactly, a sonic secret agent.
Exactly, a sonic secret agent.
What are some examples of what it can do?
Well, imagine using an LFO to gently sweep the filter cutoff,
Okay.
creating that subtle wah-wah effect, or maybe modulating the pitch of an oscillator,
Okay.
adding a vibrato that shimmers and dances.
Wow.
LFOs add movement depth and magic to your sound.
Cool. What about envelopes? How are they different?
Envelopes are all about shaping the dynamic evolution of a sound. So they control how a parameter changes over time, usually triggered by pressing a key or hitting a drum pad.
Okay.
You know, that classic ADSR envelope attack, decay, sustain, release. It's like sculpting the rise and fall of a sound.
So it controls how quickly a sound fades in and out,
Yeah, things like that.
maybe how the brightness changes over time.
Exactly. Okay, so that's LFOs and envelopes.
Right.
What about the modulation matrix?
Ah, the modulation matrix. This is where it all comes together.
This sounds complicated.
It's really not as bad as it sounds.
Okay.
It's a visual representation of all the possible connections between modulation sources like your LFOs and envelopes and destinations like filter, cutoff, pitch effects parameters.
So it's like a patch bay for modulation.
It is, you can connect anything to anything.
Wow.
And it's super flexible. You can adjust the depth of each connection.
Okay.
You can invert the signal.
Okay.
You can even combine multiple sources.
Wow.
It's like having a modular synth right there inside the Digitone 30.
So this is really where you can go wild.
This is where you can get really creative.